have them show me on their hand. So the temperature check on your hand looks like this. 5 is awesome. You're doing great. 1 is horrible. And sometimes kids will be like less than 1, but what's your temperature right now with your kiddo, their executive function, your concerns about them? 5, you feel great about how everything's going. 1, you got some massive concerns. Where are you at on a scale of 1 to 5 for those who have their camera on with your kiddo and your concerns specifically about your kiddo, the executive functioning? All right.
And for those of you, you could pop them in the chat, right? If you're not on camera.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, they could put it in the chat. Most people are at, it looked like a 2 or a 3. And then Tanya's at a 5. Tanya, can you tell us, and you can put your hands down if you want. And one person was at a 1. Tanya, can you, why did you say 5?
Hi, I'm from Mexico, so I try
Welcome.
to say it well in English. I'm a teacher, so my daughter doesn't have problems, but I'm interesting for my students.
You're interested in learning it to help your students. Okay, awesome. And then Karen, you don't have to share, but you had a 1. And I do know that there are other people maybe who didn't put up a 1 that might have a 1, but so that people, and you don't have to share, but so that people don't feel so isolated as well. Do you want to share why you said 1?
Sure. I have 2 kids that have issues, so I'm choosing my daughter because I just had an argument with her. Well, she just got diagnosed with ADHD in June, and one of the recommendations was that she have executive functioning coaching or executive function coaching, and she had a first session last Sunday and the next one is tomorrow, and she just doesn't understand why she needs it. School just started over a week ago and she's like, everything's been handed in, and I've read your thing on the dipping, like I just found you so timely, about 1.5, maybe only 1 week ago, and I read about the dipping and I'm like, yep, that's exactly with my son who's a couple of years older. And I just, yeah, she just bringing it up with her, she is volatile and doesn't want to do it. And I said, okay, fine, I'll cancel. And she was about to go out. She left the house, but then she came back. So I guess she'll do tomorrow, but then that's it, she says. So that's right.
Yeah. I hear that. Yeah, that's what we're talking about all weekend with the buy-in and ownership. You know, she doesn't have the buy-in and the ownership at this point. And then her nervous system is just feeling threatened. And
yeah.
All right, cool. Well, thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for sharing what your number is. Again, you can use that with your kiddos, even if they're teenagers. You can just be like, what's your temperature on a 1 through 5? If you do it visually, especially if they're introverted or very quiet, that's a great way. Or you can do, I do out loud 1 through 10, which are temperature. All right, Yulia, what's your temperature for this session right now? Oh, I should ask what the temperature for the summit, but we need to move on.
We can always do that at the end. Right now, I guess I'm at a 5. I'm just really excited, and this is what I do for fun and work. So cool. I just feel grateful.
Hi, Scott. We have a guy here. That's awesome.
Yes.
Big bonus points for that. And hi, Stephanie, for popping on. Who I don't know who else I might have missed, but Melanie. Okay, where do we go from here?
Okay, so I wanted to have this particular conversation about the paradoxes of how to help kids, whether you're a teacher, a coach, or a parent, because there's a lot of stuff that seems that isn't intuitive, that if you don't know to do it, you won't. But if you do know to do it, then you could kind of simplify this whole thing. And there's a group of coaches and I that meet about once a month, and we just kind of meet to support each other and talk about stuff. And one of the comments really resonated with me this last meeting we had. And one of the coaches said, you know, if you really think about it, what we're doing is pretty easy. And we all kind of nodded in agreement. So we're like, yeah, you know, some of this stuff is actually just really simple and easy to do. It's just a matter of understanding it and doing it. The hard part is kind of trying to make it work in a world that doesn't understand it, and these systems that don't respond in the way that, you know, are helpful. So I put together a list of 6 things. We can kind of go through it really quickly so that we have time for more discussion and Q&A. But the 6 paradoxes that I want to talk about, they were inspired by this book, and this was the same book that we just did in our morning meditation. So this is the Parents Tao Te Ching. Oh, I don't think I'm spotlighting here. Let me try to do that. Or Seth, can you do that? I think you're way better at it than I am.
All right. Yeah.
So I want to start with just a quick reading, and then just kind of go back and forth with you, Seth, about the 6 paradoxes, and then open it up for discussion. So this reading it's very short, and the readings in this book, they're transliterated from the Tao Te Ching. So William Martin is a therapist. He was a teacher, a philosopher, a historian, all these cool things. And he loved the wisdom of the Tao, and he wanted to create a modern version for parents. And so this is chapter 64. There's 81 chapters. And chapter 64 is titled, oops, actually, I want to start with a different one. So chapter 36 is titled Opposites Are Necessary. And it reads, if you want your children to be generous, you must first allow them to be selfish. If you want them to be disciplined, you must first allow them to be spontaneous. If you want them to be hardworking, you must first allow them to be lazy. This is a subtle distinction and hard to explain to those who criticize you. A quality cannot be fully learned without understanding the opposite. All your friends, especially the grandparents, will tell you this is nonsense. But look carefully inside of yourself. Only the child with a strong sense of self can be truly generous. Only the child who discovers his or her bliss will truly work hard. Most of what passes as discipline and hard work is an overlay of coerced behavior. It has no authentic power or joy. Only the lazy, undisciplined dreamer can discover within the source of true discipline that will bring great success. So I love the part especially where it says the people around you will tell you this is nonsense. Because a lot of what we teach, it seems counterintuitive. And the hardest part that I find as a coach when I work with families is to help people let go of the outcome that they want to see and fully accept and embrace where they are and where their child is in this moment, because that is the starting point for how to create really lasting change. And the most important thing that we all want is in our relationships to feel connected and to feel like when there is going to be a challenge, that we have the ability to work through it together collaboratively, because we need each other. So Seth, do you have any thoughts there before we kind of jump into the six topics?
Yeah, I mean, so we're talking about paradoxes, and I just really, the one that stood out to me, what was the exact words where it said something about coerced power or something like that?
Mm-hmm. One sec.
I guess, okay, so as you all know, I make a lot of content and worked with a lot of families, and if you find that, let me know. But
yeah, my sticky notes fell out, so I'm a little lost.
Something that's really fascinating to me is thinking about how we all walk through our worlds, and the world feels very normal to us because this is what we see. But if you think about it, our kids are what you would call net native. They've grown up with devices, for example, their whole life. Most of us watching right now did not. So we know as adults that that's not what we're used to, that's new in the world. But imagine our experience too. Now imagine the experience of your grandparents, everybody watching, your grandparents, how different that would have been from your experience. Now imagine your great grandparents who would have never seen an airplane or a train or an automobile in their entire life, and how different life was and how short that was in a time ago in human history. So our modern world is so different. Now, the pressures, the coercion that Yulia mentioned changes with cultures, subcultures, family cultures, school cultures. There's so much pressure, and fundamentally starting with what are the pressures being put on me, being put on the child from their friends, from their family, from, you know, anybody, to coerce them into being a certain way. The pressure, we're social creatures, the pressures are strong, but even questioning the validity of them. And that's why I have such a problem, because I have thought about this stuff so much with education. But, you know, I'm in the education world, and after teaching for 12 years and, you know, getting a master's and getting a undergraduate degree 4 years before that and all this, like, I started having a real disconnect with the way certain things are done. Classic example, the easiest one, is that I don't agree with letter grades. I think they're morally wrong. But imagine if I were to go into a school that I'm working at and be like, hey, everybody, good to see you all at the staff meeting. I just need to interrupt you all and say, I think grades are morally wrong. Can we get rid of them this year? Like, the pressure from people who've never even questioned it ever is big. And I think for all of us watching, there is pressure on your kid, neurodiverse kiddo. There's pressure perhaps from your parents, the kid's grandparents. I got an interesting comment the other day from a grandparent saying, our kid is just the grandkid is just a spoiled brat. Okay, how's that going to help? And there might be pressure from your spouse. A lot of times spouses aren't on the same page. There might be pressure from the teachers, especially if you're in a very linear private school or a very high achieving school, for your kid to be a certain way. And it can look like, in any of those examples I just gave, that the kid is at fault. They need to try harder. They're being lazy. They need to motivate. And those misunderstandings create a pressure that is the most terrifying and toxic to me, because when I get kids that are in high school or college, and then they're starting to go down really dangerous decision-making paths, I think that I'm a big fan of Gabor Mate, but in talking about connection, but I think that these kids can feel really disconnected, and that's not what we want. So anyhow, that's what really stood out to me, and the paradox that leads really into probably several of the paradoxes. So let's dive into that.
Great. Yeah. And
anyhow, I'm going to recap. I thought it'd be nice to zoom out and give like a context, even historically, because to me, that's actually important in terms of moving forward with us understanding paradoxes, so that we can feel more confident when we feel the pressure from the outside world to be like, no, I do know my kid best.
Exactly. I don't know, Seth, if you want to get back to the bigger screen.
Oh, I'm controlling the whole thing.
Let me see.
I think they're independent
Okay.
of each other.
Okay, got you. I just figured out how to do mine. So yeah, I think it's important to zoom out, because, you know, this book, the funny thing is, this is an ancient, it's ancient writings, and we're trying to really tap into ancient wisdom in order to really apply it to our modern life and the demands of our modern life. Like you said, there's so many, and it's really easy to lose yourself in the demands, and also in this belief that there's something wrong, right? There's something wrong, there's something broken. You need to fix your kid, or they're not going to be successful because they don't fit into certain systems like the school system. So this wisdom helps us to recenter, to take kind of back power, and to be sure in ourselves, because the world is going to give you a lot of messages that are going to be opposite to what we're talking about. So that's why I think it's so important to frame executive function coaching and support through this lens. And I'll just jump into the first bullet point I have here, which is,
can you go through the 6 together first?
Sure.
And then can I welcome in people? We have about 34 people in now, so a bunch of people just popped on. Welcome. If your camera's off, feel free to turn it on. That helps us know that you're a real person, and but you don't have to do that. But it definitely feels less creepy to me. And yeah, so welcome to the new people. And we are diving in now to the 6 paradoxes overview.
Yes. So really quick. So first one is that failure and mistakes are good. The second one is that problems are not an interruption to life. The third one is you want to accept your children exactly as they are in this moment in order for them to be able to develop and grow. The fourth one is giving respect in the face of disrespect. The fifth one is you don't have to have all the answers. And the sixth one is the problem is never really the problem. So do we want to dive into the first one?
Let's do it. And how are we doing on time?
Well, let's see. We're about 20 minutes in. We wanted to make this a 30-minute. So we're just kind of getting rolling and started. So I'm okay on time.
Do you want me to vibe on each of those real quick and then?
Yeah, I'll say a little bit and then I'd love to hear your thoughts. Really, it's like a nice little ping pong, and then I'd love to open the discussion. So the note I have, so my notes are from the readings directly. I'm not going to read, but I can share in the Facebook group some of these readings after this, is that the failure and mistakes are our greatest teachers. And we all, and kids, need the ability, the chance, the opportunity to fail as much as possible so that they can learn as much as possible from their mistakes and develop self-esteem from the fact that they can fail and succeed on their own. So as parents, you want to, and coaches, you want to model how to fail. And the best way to do that is to like talk out loud and be vulnerable about your own imperfections, your own failures, your difficulties, and don't be ashamed of that. Really lean into your own challenges as a parent so that you can model to your kids how to struggle in a way that is, and how to cope in a healthy way.
Awesome. And I think what comes to mind for me is that failure is often very misunderstood and that it is within context. So as a parent or an adult working with kids, we have to constantly be thinking 10 steps ahead in terms of the implications of the failure. For example, if your kiddo doesn't turn in one paper and they're going to fail this class, that may actually be really good for the kiddo to have that experience. But, and then you get to decide, am I going to like bug them, get it done, get it done, get it done, let me help you get it done and do most of it for them? Or are you going to be like, hey, it's your choice and these are the consequences if not? But then if you know that if they fail it and you're going to have to drive them to and from summer school all summer and you've got other things to do, you may be like, look, I'm not going to let you fail this class. We're going to sit down or I'm going to hire a tutor. I don't care if you like it or not, and you're going to get it done. And because I'm not driving you to summer school all summer, and because then the consequences on you and the rest of the family, especially if you have other kids you have to take places or whatever. So anyhow, the point is that it is within context. So so you do have to think through those things, that there are other people involved. And then there's also, I was talking yesterday in one of the videos about the play in the gray, that there's sort of this black and white. We can be in this sort of area of doing too much for them, enabling, saving, rescuing, learned helplessness, or we can do not enough. Oh, you'll figure it out, just pull yourself up by your bootstraps, try harder, whatever. There's sort of these two polar sides, but the magic is in the middle. We do have to push them into the middle, past the comfort zone, so they're uncomfortable, meaning like using a planner or writing a paper or writing or doing their math a little bit longer than they usually do. But if we go too far, then we've crossed the threshold and we lose them. So let's use that math example. So if they have a math assignment with 20 problems and they do 10, and they actually worked really hard to do the 10, that is probably a good time to send in a teacher and be like, look, we didn't do all 20. If you want to fail my kid on this thing, that's fine. My kid actually worked really hard on the 10, and I don't really, agree with failing them for this because they worked hard. And if we push them any further, we're losing them and they're going to hate math. And I don't want to do that. And so anyhow, that's not a bad failure, but there are times when a kid fails, for example, one of my students got arrested, and this was about 1.5 years ago. And this was a family I've been working with for years, so I knew them very well. But they decided to let him sit there for a little bit and experience that, and not just drop everything and run over to the police station, you know, and that was important for them because he had been in a pattern, and they decided that if they didn't do that, that's not for the greater good, is what they decided, because it just tells him that every time he gets in trouble, somebody just saves him and rescues him, and eventually something's going to happen so bad. And then, you know, I failed out of my first college. I dropped out of my second college before I failed out. I would have failed out of that. And those failures for me, and when I was a young person, I got fired from multiple jobs that were silly jobs. Like I got fired from grocery store, like Walgreens type pharmacy, Subway, like jobs that are not hard to do. And those failures, you know, first of all, they made me feel horrible about myself, not in a good way, but eventually those things, I did hit a point where I was like, I really want to figure this stuff out. I had the buy-in and ownership for myself to figure my life out. And then there can be little failures that parents can watch happen. And your kid can say, I just failed this test, or this thing happened with friends where they don't like me anymore. And I did something that was not cool, and that was pretty rude to other people. And you can kind of let that settle in and be like, wow, how is that? Or like what Karen was talking about earlier, you know, that might be a good situation to be like, wow, okay, you know, you don't like this person. All right, well, you know, and letting the child see what happens in the next week. But you want to do it, Karen would want to do it consciously and say, cool, well, what if that doesn't happen this week because it's the beginning of school and you know that the dip pattern hasn't started yet, right? And you're like, okay, cool. So what if if we don't see the coach tomorrow, then I'll make a deal with you. I'm going to email your teachers twice a week to find out how you're doing. And at what point do you see the coach again? You know, if you have 3 zeros, I won't get 3 zeros. Cool. If you do, you know, but notice how I said that. It's super calm. It's not like, well, what if, you know, they read our nervous systems. Anyhow, that's what I have to say about failure is there is a balance. Those were extreme examples, but there is a balance. But failure, I would say, yeah, the paradox that why we're here is that it can be good. And a lot of times we do a lot of enabling and rescuing and learned helplessness stuff, and don't let them fail in ways. And I guess the last thing that I say to parents a lot is let them fail safe. There are ways to fail safe. When it's a time, for example, let's say that it's summer and you said, hey, check the family schedule in the kitchen. There's something you might want to see, and they don't check it. And they were supposed to meet a friend and they missed it. And you're sitting there going, oh, I want to tell them so bad that they're going to miss this time with their friend. They're going to like blame me for it. And they're going to like lose out on having fun. But that is a safe, good time for you to just bite your tongue when they come and they're like, why didn't you tell me? You're like, I did. What are you going to do to solve that problem? And you don't take it on. That's like an example of a really good failure. That's a fail safe. So, and as the coach, I'm constantly looking at my conversations with them and what experience is good and bad. And it's not black and white. Obviously, Yulia and I have done this with so many kids that we probably have a good barometer, and we don't have the emotional attachment a lot of times that parents do, where it's like, I don't want to, you know, but it's really important to find that balance.
Great.
Good one. I feel like I went on way too long, but
a little bit, but great points, because there is a lot of nuance, right? I don't want to make this seem simple, but I think the big takeaway is you shouldn't fear the mistakes. And like you said, like just from your own personal life experience, like it's not a permanent state, right? Failure is a part of the roadmap.
very important.
Okay, so the second paradox is that problems are not an interruption to an otherwise serene life. right? If we can reframe how we see problems, if we can look at our particular set of problems, you'll notice all of us have our own unique set of problems. And another thing is that even though our circumstances are unique, the problems are pretty highly predictable and recurring. So your problems aren't that unique to you, which is why things like this summit are great, because you can have 60,000 people together and we can talk about one thing and have a bunch of people relate to that one thing, right? Because the human experience is not so unique. But if you can kind of look at your unique set of problems, and one thing I know I needed to do for my own life was to kind of accept and find gratitude for my particular problems, right? Because as bad as sometimes they might get, I want to ask myself this question: would I trade my set of problems for somebody else's? And my answer is no. I want my set of problems. So this idea of reframing problems as part of this whole, as being grateful for your problems, because the good stuff you have and the problems, they go hand in hand. So that's what I have to say about that. Seth, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, they're not an interruption. And what I'll often say to parents, sort of my go-to phrase around problems are not an interruption, is, well, here are the opportunities in this problem. So yes, there are, quote, bad things in a lot of life problems, but there are opportunities in them. So let's look for the opportunities in them and focus on those, because that's where we can really do something to serve the kiddo. Now, I'll tell you a problem that we are having with the summit. We just found out that 70% of people this year are taking in the summit on mobile. 70% of people are taking it in on mobile. That's up. I think last year was 30 or 40. That's really high. So that causes, so we're getting a lot of emails that we don't have time to handle, because we want to do stuff like, I want to be doing this. I don't want to be dealing with that, right? But we have to deal with that today too. So I was up early this morning with my assistant trying to figure out, well, should we make new pages with audio only? And then if we do, are people going to steal the audio and never pay for the thing, which they don't have to, but you could just steal it. And this is also, it's a service, but it's also our livelihoods. So we're like trying to figure this stuff out, and how can we, because we want to provide, if people want just it, we want to do that. People are like opening the browser and they'll have like 4 videos playing at the same time. They don't know how to do it on their phone, so we're having all kinds of emails about this stuff. Well, that's a problem, but it's the opportunity is, how do we serve people better? How do we work with this problem? Do we do it now? Do we save it for next year? Do we spend a lot of energy on it today to put an update today? Or do we do it for tomorrow? Or do we do it for the 2 bonus days? That's a problem. But I could be like freaking out about it, but I would never, ever be able to create, this is a passion of mine. And this has to do with the failure too. This is my 3rd year of doing this. Every year we've tried multiple things that were failures, but they're not failures. It's just that it's an opportunity for next year to do it better. So, and I've done so many things. I mean, I have ADHD, so I am not, I am not very risk averse. I'm willing to take risks. That's a good thing. It's not always a good thing, but in terms of this, I'm willing to be like, oh, I tried these webinars and people didn't care. And I tried to, I could have never, if I was so averse to failure, I would have never tried the summit in the first place. Or even like YouTubing or any stuff, but like, these are ways that I get to live I hate to sound cheesy, but to live my passion is to take risks and try to be of serve. Like, that's my frame. I try to serve, but problems are not interruptions. They're so, and when we rescue and this relates so much to the failure, when we rescue and enable and save and fix it for them and all this stuff, we're not empowering them to have failures and to say, and if you're writing notes today, this is a good one to write. Wow, that seems like a frustrating problem, or wow, you look really frustrated with that problem, or wow, that's a big problem. That looks really hard. How are you going to solve it? And then letting them talk. And then when you're about to say, oh, that won't work, don't say that. Say, wow, how do you think that'll work? Wow, tell me more. Tell me more is a great one to write down. Tell me more. So A, write down how are you going to solve that problem?
I just speak to that as a mobile user, obviously sitting outside and just getting a low battery. Deal with it for next year.
Okay. So jot those things down. How are you going to solve that problem? That sounds really whatever. Or and then how can I be helpful? I say that all the time. Not here's how I'm going to help. How can I be helpful? So what are you going to do to solve that problem? Another one is tell me more. I'm listening. How are you going to solve that problem? And how can I be helpful? And then we had somebody was talking yesterday about that their kid would say, like with video games, that the solving the problem would be letting them play more. And you're obviously allowed to say, yeah, when I said, how can I be helpful? I didn't mean, how can I let you play more video games? That's not an answer. Okay.
I want to comment on one thing you said, Seth, that when, and these phrases that you had people write down, there's a silent message behind the words that you're saying, that you're not speaking. And the silent message is, I trust that you can do this. You've got this. You can figure this out. That's the real message we're communicating when we're asking those types of questions. And that's important. And saying that out loud, by the way, doesn't hurt either.
That's a good one too. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I will tell you all that is how my grandmother manipulated me in the
That's
very
a good
best
story.
way. She did it from the bottom of her heart, and she'd be like, you'll do the right thing. And I'd be like, no, Grandma, I never do the right thing. Stop saying that.
That's a good one. All right, ready for number 3? Okay, number 3, there's a reading in this book titled As They Are. And it's about when you're with your kid, just just kind of connecting with your body and allowing your body to become supple as your child's. That's the quote from the book. And if you think about it, kids, they live in the moment. They live in their senses and their imagination and their emotion, right? They usually don't have like an agenda that they're running around with. And they have this gift of being in the moment, and we can learn a lot from that as adults. And so when you see them, you could take that as a reminder to just be one with them in that way, and fully accept and embrace them exactly how they are. Not just trying to convince yourself to say like, it's okay, I'm not going to worry, but really trying to intentionally get to this point where you don't need them to be any different. You don't need to fix anything. You don't need the problems to be solved or to go away in order for you to feel like you can be calm and present with your kid. Right? It's not like, well, when this problem is solved, then I'll be okay, right? Or when they stop screaming, then I'll be okay, right? And so no matter what's happening, just fully accept them in that moment. And there's another reading called No Need for Force. And there's this idea that even if you willed all your power to try to change them, it's impossible anyway. Right. So if it's impossible for you to coerce them or force them into being any different, then your only real choice is to accept them exactly as they are. And the paradox in that is, once you can truly do that consistently, that is when you will watch them really transform and your relationship transform.
And I'll be brief on this one, but yeah, the more we're accepting of where they're at, the irony, the paradox of that is that that's when, and you guys can look in the Facebook comments today, you'll see so many things. Like, actually, if you look at that thread that says the biggest lessons that parents learned, that one is so good, but so much of it is about that. It's like when we let go and we're like, okay, that spaciousness somehow is magic, where the kids can like actually then, I think it's a nervous system thing, but they can then feel like safe to be like, okay, now this is mine. I can have some agency, some ownership. I'm the one who didn't whatever turn in the homework, or who said this thing to that kid and lost a friendship or whatever. Like that, it's not, when we don't interferes so much, they can start to have their own experience, but we can also feel our own nervous system relaxing, which then co-regulates. I mean, I think it has a lot to do with that. So there was one other thing I wanted to say about that. Accepting 100%. Oh, there's this, I think it's a book, but the term radical acceptance is just so cool. Oh, and then the last thing I wanted to say is a clarification. So Yulia said, when we can truly do that, I'm going to say the opposite of that paradoxically. You don't have to truly do it. There's another paradox called fake it till you make it. And you can bite your tongue and fake that you're having a regulated nervous system and that you're letting go. And when it's not a practice for us to let go, then we're not smooth at that practice. So you can fake it till you make it. You are practicing that. So act as if they're not pushing your buttons. You know, there's a lot of wisdom in the fake it till you make it, where you could be like paradoxically, I'm not actually accepting this. I don't like this. Oh, and then the last thing is some things are not acceptable. So meaning like you might accept your kid. One of the speakers talks about volatility in kids a lot. Tasha Shore, and the first person who's asking today about their child, I think she even used the word volatile, but that it's not acceptable for your kid to kick you or, you know, scream F you to your face or things like this, but to accept, and this really gets to the next one. So I'll stop there because let's go on to that next one.
It's interesting. There's a lot of paradoxes there, right? And I think just one last thing to say about that is one big barrier to accepting like the present moment and what's happening, even if the behavior isn't acceptable and you need to create that boundary very clearly, you know, is self-acceptance. This is a big theme when we work with parents and families, is that there's a lot of self-criticism, shame. And I know for myself, even now, when I watch some of these conferences and interviews and I learn something new, my first reaction to that is almost to say like, oh my gosh, how come I didn't know this before? And when have I not applied this? And how am I going to be different? And there's a sense of almost failure or shock or like shame when you learn something new because you've been doing it wrong. And I know as a coach, I'm constantly learning and I still have that experience. So just to kind of tolerate the discomfort of that and acceptance is a process, and to trust that you'll get to that point where you really do and acting that way. So I think that was a great point. Okay, we are number 4. This is my absolute favorite one. It's showing respect in the face of disrespect. And this is all about, I like to phrase it this way. When we're modeling how to be an adult, we want to contrast the child, right? So here's an adult and here's the child. And as an adult, I want my actions to contrast the child. So if they're being immature, disrespectful, impulsive, rude, whatever it is, I know the best thing I can do to teach them the opposite is to model the opposite. And many parents are worried when they don't immediately either stop or punish or coerce that behavior away, because they believe that, well, if I don't react in kind, I'm going to teach them that this is okay, and the world doesn't think this is okay, and they're not going to be out, accepted out there. And
or I'm a bad parent, and
I'm a bad parent.
We were talking about at the beginning,
right? So I think this is so important because it's one of the hardest things to do. To be respectful in the face of disrespect, and know, like if you know at your core that is the right thing to do, I think it makes it easier. And your kids will notice that over time, your consistent action. I have a really quick funny story about this. I was working with a dad. It was one of my first clients years ago, and he had a 6-year-old, and the 6-year-old was like screaming at the top of his lungs and running around and wouldn't come and sit down at the session. And I was just practicing letting that go and modeling that to the parents. And his dad asked me this question. He said, but Yulia, just tell me this thing. Isn't it true that my child is immature? Because he just wanted me to acknowledge that he's being immature. And I said, of course he's immature. He's 6. It's okay for him to be immature. He's allowed to be immature. And I was very strong about saying, but you, on the other hand, I hold to a much higher standard. So I don't want you screaming back at him, right? So that really sticks with me and resonated. Any thoughts on that, Seth?
Yeah, my thought on the respecting disrespect is that, so my favorite year of the word from the summit is the word notice. I think that's the thing that stands out from more speakers than anything. And is when they're being the disrespectful or they're doing something that we think is not okay, is the noticing it, noticing their nervous system, noticing what's happening in their body, noticing that they're having their own thoughts, their own experience right now, and that experience for them is not comfortable. It's a response to the narrative that they have in the moment, that they're feeling threatened in some way or unsafe, even if it doesn't seem like that. And we often want to approach this stuff with logic and reason and trying to explain things to them, but they're in an emotional state at these times. And so having the noticing or a curiosity, a non-judgmental curiosity, more like, wow, what's going on with you? Rather than don't do that, that's disrespectful. It's like, wow, what's up? Like, how would you do that with a friend who you knew really well? And one day you all were at an event or something and they were like really rude, and you'd walk away with them a minute later and be like, what's up? Are you okay? What's going on? You never act like that. So that sort of curiosity that you might have in that type of a moment is what we want in this moment. So now I work with teenagers a lot and middle schoolers, and probably the biggest age for the disrespect, I would say, is probably the 7th and 8th grade. But obviously it can go into teenagehood, but it just presents differently. But in 7th and 8th grade, it's just so blatant. They're just so, their social brain is really, really growing at that time. They're trying to figure out how they fit into the world. So when they're doing that stuff, they're testing things out. Well, that's part of the story, but to say, wow, they're not really necessarily being disrespectful. They're testing me. They're testing my boundaries. They're seeking agency and control in their life. They're trying to be grown up, even though they're not. Their brain's changing. Their hormones are going crazy. So yeah, to be objective and curious. I guess that's notice and curiosity would be the 2 words I would say. Notice their body language, their vocal tones, the things behind. This reminds me of another one, but sort of what's underneath the surface. Oh, the problem is not the problem. That gets into this. Sorry, I'm going to jump ahead, but that gets into that. The problem is not the problem. The problem is not disrespect. There's something else going on underneath the iceberg, or there are many things. What are those? Are they, really just emotionally dysregulated because they didn't sleep? Are they testing boundaries? Do they have a pimple in the middle of their forehead that they cannot stop thinking about and obsessing on, even though nobody cares but them, but they are like absolutely angry and dysregulated because they are so worried about that? Did they have something happen with a friend that you don't know about? Do they feel shamed that they're not good enough with school or whatever? So the story is not the story. The problem is not the problem.
Awesome. Your point about curiosity is a great lead into the next paradox, and it's the 5th one, is that you don't have to have all the answers. And there's this sense that if you can remain at your center, if you can focus on your own nervous system, your own regulation, and start really building that toolbox for yourself, and have resources, have people that you trust and you can get help from, you could really take away this unrealistic expectation of yourself, right? That you at any given moment should have the right thing to say or know what to do or how to help. So letting that go, that expectation, and focusing on remaining calm and curious in that moment, more often than not, you're going to find that when you're connecting with yourself like that and connecting with your kid like that, the answers are going to naturally become visible to you. It's kind of weird to say it that way, but it's just part of this different way of seeing the problem, right? And not trying to fix or rescue. You as a parent know that you're there to guide your kid and give them the space to have these experiences, and you don't have to rescue. And it's okay to say, I don't know what to do. I don't have the answers. And now you're modeling all these skills of acceptance and not trying to rescue. And now you're saying, well, let's figure it out together. Let's problem solve, and let's go call somebody who knows about this or that. And that, to me, that ability to self-advocate and to ask for and accept help, that's a huge skill that kids need to practice lifelong, and to be interdependent. Oh, Scott, yeah, Dr. Lee really hit on this. He really emphasized it. I loved his talk for that reason. It is, he wants to normalize asking for help and not feeling like I should be able to figure this out on my own, or I should know the answer. So I think that's a huge point.
Yeah, and I think for the not knowing it all, what it reminds me of is that note that I got the other day with the spoiled brat thing. By the way, welcome to those who came in late. If you want to turn your video on, we would all who have it on appreciate it. You don't have to, but it's just kind of weird sometimes, and we don't know who the people are, and just, I don't know, it creeps me out. But you're invited to turn your video on if you want. But the not know-it-all, that there's something, okay. So talking about what I talked about at the beginning and looking back, and we accept sort of our lives and culture as the way it is, but this is new in human history, like airplanes, for example. Like everything is new, but it seems so normal because we're in it, okay? If we time traveled even just 50 years ago or 100 years ago, we'd be like, what in the world? Our world is so different. So there's a lot of, and we were talking about pressure, there's a lot of pressure to do things a certain way. So when we feel like we have to know it all, I think there's a lot of unconscious pressure. And the reason that reminds me of that email is saying our grandchild is just a spoiled brat. There's a narrative that person has about the situation where they're labeling the child as this thing called a spoiled brat, however the person defines that. And they feel like they know it all. I don't know them, I don't know it all, but that comes from a place of, yeah, they're just this is just this thing, they just need to change, they just need to stop being lazy or just behave or just comply or whatever the thing is. And it's so simple. Well, what happens with, and this is my problem, Julia's problem, this is a human condition problem. What happens with us being a know-it-all is there are these things called biases and cognitive biases. You can look up cognitive biases. We all have them. But the problem with it is that we're going to use what's called confirmation bias. And your kids do this all the time, but we do it as well. When we think we know it all, we often go to confirmation bias, which means that we are going to seek people or information that confirms what we already believe rather than look for a different way. And when it comes to kids, this is high stakes. This is their quality of life. We don't want to be stuck in confirmation bias. We want to find the truth. Now, if the truth confirms what we already believe, great, then we can get clarity on that. But we want to be people who are able to, like we want our kids to be able to be metacognitive and introspective and self-reflective and those sorts of things. We ourselves want to self-reflect and challenge our own beliefs as well. So that's what I think about the know-it-all. There's a safety and security in confirmation bias. It feels good. It feels like, yeah, this is how it is. But remember, we've been fed this, and it may or may not be true, but we've been fed ideas through all sorts of cultures and subcultures throughout our whole lives. So we need to see, oh, am I responding mindfully and with some openness and self-awareness, or am I reacting more emotionally and I don't even know it? We all do it, but I think that open-mindedness is there. And then, sorry, so I feel like I'm talking too much because I want to hear what everybody has to say, and we're like past time, and I have another live in 20 minutes. I told her a quarter after, and I haven't done, my to-do list for technical issues.
All right. The good news is
I'm doing that next year. Okay.
the good news is we're at the end of the list,
Okay.
and
And
everything.
I already addressed the problem. It's not the problem.
Yeah.
The story is not the story.
But just one last thing about the not knowing. Our brain loves certainty. It's literally wired for certainty, and that's why this is so hard. And when we don't know what to do, fear can take over, and then we do all the wrong things. So that's why being centered and being okay with not knowing is so important. And the last point is
and can I say it? I think that's why immersion is so good. When I immerse myself in whatever, in class, a summit, a weekend, or whatever, like you're so immersed with it that you can start to. It's kind of hard to convey that magic, but start to have shifts and aha moments and breakthroughs.
Yeah, because you can't go back to not knowing once you've known something too, right? So once you know something new, you're like, oh man, I'm gonna have to figure out how this fits into my view of things right now. So the final thing is this question: can you see through the behavior? Can you see through the problems to the heart of your child? If you can see through the problems and see the inherent goodness in your child, there's a great quote in this book, then you will know exactly what to do. And this just fits into this idea that, the problem isn't the problem. Your kid's yelling at you, that's problematic, but that's not the problem. There's some unsolved problem beneath the surface there. And rather than trying to teach them discipline and respect and all these skills, if you can help to work collaboratively in a respectful way to solve that problem together and help to empower them to feel like they can problem solve, then those behaviors naturally go away because they no longer serve your child. If you could see through the even volatile behaviors to the heart, you will see that we are all wired naturally. We're born with the wiring for empathy and collaboration. As humans, this is how we're programmed to get along with each other. And when we're observing behaviors that are opposite, they are an indicator that there's an unsolved problem, that there's something happening beneath the surface. And so the problem that you're noticing is usually not the problem itself. And that's my last point.
Good point to end on. I'm going to make myself leave in 8 minutes so that I can have a few minutes before the next one. Yulia might be able to stay on for Q&A, but I'll do some rapid fire Q&A. I also want to honor and invite people who are quieter or more introverted or whatever, or who it might take you a few moments to articulate your question, to pop it in the chat, and I'll look at some of the questions there. And I'll do some rapid fire questions. So if you want to pop on and ask a question, I'm going to open it to the gallery view. Just unmute yourself and go for it. And Yulia, I'll leave you out of the questions for now because you can stay on. So you can just unmute yourself right this second, or you can pop it in the chat. And I'm not going to read the above chats just time-wise. So just pop it in the chat if you want.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah, we had two people. I think I see Lindsay and who?
Sarah.
Lindsay and Sarah. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Let's start with Sarah, and then I'm going to go to Lindsay. Go ahead, Sarah.
I just had a question about sort of interrupting the story that we tell ourselves sometimes in the heat of the moment. I feel like sometimes it's easy to get caught up in projecting forward when I see a behavior, getting too caught up in like how this is going to affect my child at different ages throughout life. And trying to step out of obviously focusing on the behavior, but also trying to interrupt that story of, this is going to be a problem when he is this age or that age, or gets to this point in life. And knowing that it's not a helpful place to be in solving the problem. So I'm wondering what you have for support around sort of interrupting that as a parent in the heat of the moment.
Well, the first thing is that there is value in those thoughts, because your worries are probably to some extent valid, but sitting in them is where it just, in spinning on that stuff, that's where it's not. So there's a line where it's not serving you anymore. So to contemplate, wow, if my kid does this thing could happen. Like, obviously there's value in like thinking that through, but sitting stuck in it and staying in worry or anxiety about it, or how you communicate those worries. So I guess the things that come to mind is one is sort of the replacement theory, right? Like if you have a bucket full of water and you put a giant stone in the water, it's going to displace it. So it's not like you just don't have those worries or thoughts anymore, but you have to replace them. So my encouragement to you would be to write out one day, you know, or over multiple days, whatever, grab a new journal and write out all your worries. And then you could do 2 columns or something. I'm just giving you an idea, but the idea is, somebody's got their mic on that has a scratchiness, so it might, but the idea is to write out all those worries and then write out the opposite of those, or write out how you want to displace it. And I'm just telling you from my own experience and my own anxieties, and I used to have panic attack disorder and stuff like this, like, and depression. So, but for me, writing has been super magical, as well as things like therapy. And then the next thing I'm going to mention, but really, really trying to be conscious about what you want to replace it with. Now, what I do is every morning I have like a 3-page type thing that I change every once in a while, but I sit down and sort of do like my own prayer meditation thing in the morning, or setting intentions, or whatever you want to call it. But I have my own things that I'm working on in my life, whether it's personal, whether it's career, whether it's fitness or whatever. And I don't reach all my goals. In fact, you know, like during this summit and stuff, I'll tell you something I'm ashamed to say, but nobody cares, but I care. And then I feel the shame that I shouldn't. But I've been eating like pizza and ice cream every night for like a week and a half. And
that's understandable, having done event planning before. I get it.
But I'm like self-critical. I'm like, I don't want anyone, like I hear these messages that are unconscious. And so that's kind of what you're talking about, is that these messages are really quiet and subtle, and they're in there, and they have to be replaced or displaced. The other thing, and with reading my thing in the morning, the reason I'm saying that is because if you just write the replacements and never reflect back on that journal, like you don't have to read the negative ones anymore. They're already ingrained in your head, but to read what you replace them with, like make that list and print it, or read it every day for a month and experiment with stuff like that, or pick 10 of them. I'm just throwing out ideas, but we have to practice. And then what I'm going to get to is what is the best solution and the worst solution of all. And that is mindfulness meditation for me, because it's the worst solution because it's slow. You don't notice the effects right away. You know, you might feel relaxed right away, but it doesn't change the problem. But then you notice like 6 months later, you're not responding to life the same. Because for me, the meditation allows me to hear that unconscious stuff. And like we said before, notice it and be the observer. And then when it comes up in daily life and you're in a daily situation and you have the initial reaction, there's suddenly that pause that Viktor Frankl talks about, the pause between stimulus and response. There's that pause grows a little bit, where we don't just react, but we have a little pause where we can react differently. And that's been the magic in my life that has, on a personal level, not working with kids, but that has helped me change how I respond to things. So when you have that worry, you can have that pause that gets into, okay, let's back up a little bit. What the heck is going on here? Is that worry serving me right now? Is it not? Do I replace it? You know, it's just, so if I had a magic wand, I would give everybody a meditation practice, even if it was 3 minutes a day.
That's really helpful. Thank you very much.
And then was it Lindsay?
Hi, yes. I just want to say thank you so much for the summit. I have learned so much. It's been so helpful. My question is about number 4 for the paradox, showing respect in the face of disrespect. So I'm okay with my son's 8. I'm okay with the swearing. The mean words hurt, but we deal with that. But my more question is with the disrespect, with the physical, with the hitting, damaging people's stuff, that sort of thing. How do you show respect in those situations?
Yeah, that's not my wheelhouse, but there are two people that I'm going to tell you about. One
Okay.
is Tasha Shore, and she's one of the speakers, and one is Dana Abraham, and she's a past speaker, and she did a bonus one. They both deal with volatility, and Tasha particularly with boys. But where my mind goes to with those sorts of things is it's, as far as executive function is concerned, is it's still under the umbrella of executive function with emotional regulation. So emotional regulation is part of executive function. And if you watch my presentation yesterday, I talked about spoke theory and how these things are connected. Impulsivity is part of being volatile and explosive. So impulsivity, so part of executive function is we have the skills to inhibit. So this kiddo isn't able to inhibit and hold back, and there's an explosiveness in it, what you could call an impulsivity. You could look at it again because it's the spoke theory, it's things connected. It also goes into that area of the emotional regulation. The child doesn't have tools to regulate. What we were just talking about with Sarah, the child doesn't have tools to have a pause button to choose a different response. So what's happening is, on a nervous system level, is this kid is, for some reason, it sounds like some sort of a trauma response. Now, people think of trauma and they misunderstand it a lot, but there's what's called big T and little t trauma. But the kid, for whatever reason, feels unsafe. And I'm guessing that this kiddo, whereas most people would have sort of a baseline of calm.
Yeah.
Or if you look at a dog, and most dogs are going to have a baseline of calm. But if you see one that's sort of always revved up and you're at the dog park, and that its baseline is higher. And for me, my sensitivity, when I really went through a lot of depression and anxiety, so here's a typical baseline. My baseline was here. I was like waiting for a bad thing to happen and yada, yada. So the child's nervous system is like on edge already. Where am I going to feel unsafe? Where am I going to feel threatened? And it's looking for this, and it's trying to figure out, how do I respond? And then he responds with, you got fight, flight, or freeze, respond with fight. Now, I love polyvagal theory, and I tried to get Deb Dana on, and she said yes, and then she canceled. Deb Dana and Stephen Porges and something called polyvagal theory, but the kid is in fight, flight, or freeze. They're in flight and fight, which is active. Freeze is shut down. But polyvagal theory is really helpful in understanding what's going on with the nervous system. But the child feels unsafe and threatened and goes into fight to respond to that, and can't get to what's called safe and social, or can't get to a state where they're regulated. So my frame is, how do we help them learn those sort of emotional regulation tools and skills to, and it's good that you know at this age, because I've seen this happen with teenagers. And if you're working on this now, that's really good, because they need
It's
to
been
learn.
Thanks to COVID. With him, he's been home since March because we're in Ontario, Canada, and yeah, just having him home has really shown this. Yeah, and not getting a lot of modeling from other kids for how they regulate and problem solve. Yeah,
it's tough, so tough. But those are sort of the things that I would guide you to, and I would not hesitate with a great therapist. I would not hesitate. Like this is what they're trained to do, is to help with stuff like this.
Yeah, we're just trying to find the right ones. Hasn't been successful.
That's hard. That's hard.
Yeah. Actually, the speaker you had on yesterday, that was about the polyvagal theory, she was talking about, found out she's in Peterborough, so she's only a couple hours away from us, which is awesome.
Wow, maybe you can do like half day things that might.
Yeah.
All right,
Thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thanks, Lindsay. I'll do one more, and I'm gonna, somebody can pop on, but I'm gonna look at the chat too. About the dip, on my website, sethperler.com, I have a in-depth something article or blog or vlog, and I have a search button somewhere on my site. Look up the word dip. Yulia, they're asking for the name. Oh, there it is. Okay. How do you find the balance between seeking help for your resistant child who is in a constant state of arousal and yet still helping them feel loved and accepted? That's a good question. So very similar to what I was saying on this one, those things would apply as well. And Ramona, did you just pop on? I'll grab your question next. And still help them feel loved and accepted. So you got words, you got actions, you got thoughts, you got feelings, right? I think words are really important here too. So it's really important to call out certain things. So it's really important to say, and I do this a lot. I mean, I wouldn't use the words I'm about to say to you because it's not my child, but so I'm not going to like work with a client and be like, I love you, because I'm not their family, but to be like, hey, we had a rough night. I love you. I am not perfect. I will make mistakes, but I want you to know that you can come to me with anything, even if I don't respond the right way. I will try better. I give you my word. I will always try better. I will never be perfect, but I will always be here. You can tell me anything, even if it doesn't seem like it. And I love you 100%. I will always be here for you. Like, even if they don't seem like they're listening and they're an angsty teenager, just those messages over and over and over. And it like kind of like the meditation, you know, where I said 6 months down the road, this is one of those things where, you know, they might come to you months or a year later and say something to you, and you just connect the dot. Wow, I'm really glad I kept telling them that message over and over. So words are really important. So when we are like, oh, I wish I didn't blow up at them or respond that way or this or that, or to say, you know what, this is, I just want you to know that this is how I feel. And, you know, we had a dad last semester, and he said that one of the successes with his daughter is that his daughter's hugging him again, you know, and I mean, hugs to feel loved and just saying, I love you. And then the last thing I'm going to say about words, and this is really important, is the 3-to-1 rule. It's just 3 positives to every 1 perceived negative. Karen Tui Boys, the speaker we had last year, said that kids hear 20 to 30 negatives for every 1 positive they hear about themselves. But really trying to focus on what I call the 3-to-1 rule, which is just 3 positives every 1 negative that you say. So really noticing, and then again, that word notice again, their effort. Like maybe they failed the thing, but you're like, hey, and this is a frame that I think for Yulia and I is really easy. But kids like, yeah, I failed this stupid thing. And I'll be like, yeah, you failed that. But actually, look at how you're structuring those paragraphs. That's awesome. You weren't doing that a month ago. Or do you know how hard you worked on that? You've never done that when you were working with me, and you like really dove into this. That's a success. You know, so to notice, you know, little things. Hey, what you just said to your sister, that was awesome. I really like the way, you know, you're just such a kind person. And maybe they're not always like that, but don't say you're just such a kind person sometimes, or when you feel like, just let it marinate. You're so kind. That was so kind. But I think that's what goes a long way. Really see them, see that all the beautiful things about them, and the effort, not the result, the effort when they do. Like, you got to build. They have to feel seen. So that's part of, I think, the magic of what Yulia and I do. When I say magic, I just mean like our secret is like, we don't just, but like a lot of what we do is really just seeing them and pointing it out to them, using words, pointing it out. And Ramona, and then I'm going to go, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to start in 3 minutes. Like,
thank you so much. My question is this. I just realized that she is my adoptive daughter, but she is also my granddaughter. And we realize that she has the same issue. So then I got myself tested, and her mother tested, and her younger sibling tested. We all have the same issue. So how would you say, as our family would be, to get myself, because I have the same you know, I wouldn't say disorder, because I don't like the word disorder, but I have the same, you know, ability that she does. And so it's really hard in our family because we all live together. So the dynamic in there is so volatile. So we're constantly yelling at each other, blah, blah, blah. So with that being said, I know you need to go.
The 3-minute version is, and I just emailed her the link, so I'll be a couple minutes late with her. The 3-minute version is this, and that's a really great question, Ramona. Thank you for asking that. So the dynamic is very suffocating. You have a lot of people who have a lot of emotion coming out. So it's not going to change overnight. So first of all, like being like, okay, it's not going to change overnight, but we do have solutions, and we're going to make some headway with this. So I would really, and what I said to Sarah, if I were you, I would pull out a journal or a sticky note or whatever and write down what you envision, like that you want to remember, like we are going to move forward in this. We are going to make progress, and like put that up on your mirror and like read that every day, because you are. It might feel like it's a ways off, but you start moving in that direction. You're going to get there. And the other thing is that everyone's nervous system is activated when you, Ramona, like do your work, and you're like, you know what, everybody can do what they want to do. I'm going to find a great therapist, or I'm going to find a great book, or I'm going to like listen to the audio of the speakers over and over throughout the year, or I'm going to like find some good podcasts I like, or whatever. And then the meditation or whatever, if you're starting to work on just like your nervous system, then you're not going to be as triggered, but also you're going to what's called co-regulate to them. And they're going to be saying, wow, Ramona's nervous system is calm, and their nervous system is going to say, I guess I'm safer than I thought I was. So that co-regulation is very, 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 very powerful. So I would say keep on doing whatever work you're doing, and that it will pay off. And then the other thing that is very practical, I would say, is if you can get buy-in to have a family meeting that has a format. And I would like print out a format and do a weekly family meeting, same time, make it fun, have dinner, whatever you all want to do, but where there is a time where people can say and not be interrupted, like you could pass around a ball or something sacred in the family, that you all have, a sacred photograph or object or something. And when somebody has it, they can really speak their truth, and nobody can interrupt, even if they say things that aren't kind or whatever. And I'm just giving an example, but creating a ritual that's weekly, where everyone can at least try to have an opportunity to be heard and understood, and so that those things will trickle into other days throughout the week. But really just trying to have a place where you're having fun, you have a good dinner, but then you have time where everybody can be heard and say what's really going on. Maybe, and I'll give you this one last tip. Maybe what you do is you do a high-low. So just another temperature check. Temperature check can be 1 through 5 or 1 through 10, like I was showing you. A high-low, though, is different. So you can say, all right, what's everybody's high-low this week with the family, with the house, whatever. And maybe somebody's like, my high is this was the best thing and this was the worst thing. And everybody has a chance to say that. And it's not a time to blame and this and that. Now, will that come in? Probably, but not from Ramona. But it's okay if they do that. And they're like, you weren't blah, blah, blah. And you can be like, thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. And you don't have to say, I'm going to change anything, whatever. You get to go on to your high-low. And so, but people might need them to just be able to say it. But that's, I would say, the high-low in the family weekly thing might be a really good, just easy starter to start getting some communication where people can feel heard.
Thank you. Yeah, we just found out about it like recently, within the last 6 months. So it's kind of new dynamic.
We'll take a deep breath.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I mean, find the humor in it too, because there's got to be, I'd imagine if there are 4 people with ADHD personalities, there's probably a lot of fun craziness too.
Yeah, there is.
So
especially with the 2-year-old who is like, and we're all pretty highly intelligent, which is really, it's good and bad, like we said. So
yeah.
All right, I thank you.
Yeah. All right, everybody. Yulia will stay on. I'm sorry that I have to get off, but I have to get off minutes ago. And yeah, I'm glad you're all here. And bye, everybody.
Thanks,
Bye, Yulia. Thanks.
Whew. All right. And Ramona, just to follow up on that, Seth and I literally, I think yesterday, recorded a video in the Facebook Live about how do you teach your kid executive function skills if you struggle with it too. And we really dove into the benefits of it, because as coaches, Seth and I, we both struggle with ADHD. And I come from a very dysfunctional, very intelligent, but very dysfunctional family of 6. And I think one thing that Seth says a lot is the strongest nervous system wins.
Oh,
And I was one of the people in my family that when I recognized that this dysfunction was happening as an adult, and I was diagnosed as an adult too, and I was diagnosed with an anxiety disorder. I didn't even know what anxiety was. And I thought that like my baseline was so volatile and high that I thought that's just how people felt all the time. I didn't know that that was anxiety until I healed some of that. And then I look back and think, oh my God, how did we survive every day? But over time, I've noticed that as I've worked on myself, my entire family has actually evolved. And I'm not taking all the credit, but I know my modeling and my nervous system impacted them a lot. And we still get into stuff together. But another model I love, it's very simple. It's called the zones of emotional regulation. I'm going to type it in the chat.
okay.
It uses 4 colors, blue, green, yellow, red. And it's just a very easy, simple thing like teachers teach their kindergartners, but I love using it with adults too, to notice, hey, I'm in this zone. I'm in the blue zone. I'm tired. I'm very low on energy. Or I'm in the green zone. I'm focused and I'm feeling good. I'm in the yellow zone. I'm starting to feel either like really wiggly and excited or really anxious, and I'm starting to lose a bit of control. And then you can get into the red zone where you're totally out of control. And that's when you get the kids who hit and bite and scream and yell. So noticing, okay, you're in this zone, right? This is where you are in your energy regulation zone, and I'm in this zone. And a really quick example, between me and my sister, we're about 1.5 years apart. And man, she used to be the one person in my family that could trigger me better than anyone else.
Mm.
And we realized that when she and I are in different zones, we can really set each other off. And it has nothing, it's not personal. If I'm in the blue zone and she's in her yellow zone, I am immediately, she's going to suck the whatever energy I have out of me, right? And I'm going to immediately be triggered, and my nervous system is going to be like, get away from me. Now, when I come to visit her from far away, I park my car and she's up the driveway. She's already like, I'm in my yellow zone. I'm going to go calm down. So she kind of calls herself out now. So that model is so helpful. It's so simple.
Yeah, it's kind of a struggle because when I started school, because I was going to go into therapy to get my degree, I realized, during that time where I was and what was going on with me. So it's kind of imperative for me to get my household under control, because I can't go out and do the coaching that I want to do if there's chaos where I live.
The good news is, and this might seem weird, but I call my family of origin, that's my laboratory. I got to practice a lot of things with them that helped me as a coach. So you have a whole laboratory there of people. And the good news about, and it must be a shock. There's an ADHD support group, and a lot of the people there are older adults, and they get diagnosed very late in life. And when we introduce ourselves, we talk about, I was diagnosed late in life or diagnosed at this age. And it's interesting to be diagnosed later in life and to look back and things are all of a sudden making sense and clicking, and all the emotions that come with that, and refinding yourself. It's kind of a shockwave. Yeah. Thank you for that question.
You're welcome.
I'll stick around for about 15 more minutes. I'd love to chat more. Oh gosh, Rondalia, am I saying that right now after you've corrected us? Yes, okay.
Yes, you did. And no worries. Like I said, I'm so, it's just part of having that many letters in your name.
I can relate.
So, yes. So in terms of the staying calm and being respectful and disrespect, one of the biggest struggles that we have is, and I like what you said about the parent that that you had in terms of, do you see how immature he is? Yes, he's 6. He's supposed to be immature. You are not. So I worked really hard on myself because I have a nerve dystrophy. And so I have to keep control of my nervous system. Otherwise I go paralyzed.
Wow.
But when the kids yell and the spouse yells, and then I'm blamed for not taking it seriously. And I've tried, and the kids are now 10 and 14. So they're starting to understand that, because I've started saying, you can take the high road. You can choose to stay calm regardless of who's yelling at you. But do you have any input for that? Because it's like you said at the beginning that people will tell you it's nonsense. And I really liked how you said equality cannot be understood without first experiencing the opposite.
Mm-hmm.
So I want the kids to experience that opposite, to understand it. And yet when that's what's being modeled, everything I do to model the calmness gets slammed down.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, the strongest nervous system wins. It's not the calm one. How do you get the calm one to win?
I challenge that idea because in the moment it might seem like the one that's getting the most attention is winning. I challenge that thought.
As soon as I said it, I thought, you know what, after a couple of years, I'm seeing, wait a minute, maybe they are seeing my actions over the loud words.
Yeah.
Okay.
And your children are going to have a different expectation from you, right, than they do from your partner. And so they might, the relationship they have with you, the expectation they have from you is different because of your actions. So I just want to validate that what you're already doing is awesome.
So when that triggers the partner, because I have a different relationship, is there a good way to handle that back?
Yeah. I'll answer this in this way. And this is kind of like the answer to all the questions. Is that there's a certain process by which we can get ahead of predictable and recurring problems. And I'm directly quoting Ross Greene. So what you just mentioned is something that is highly recurring, right? And you could pretty much bet $100 when it's going to happen. You could see it coming from a mile away. So knowing that, and knowing that in the moment as it's happening, you have no control. You really only have control over yourself,
right,
and what you can model. So in the moment, part of being able to let go and just observe and be curious and learn and notice things is knowing that once that situation is behind you and in the space of, okay, it's behind us and it's coming up soon, maybe even 10 minutes the next day, there's a space in there where you can get ahead of it. And this is the proactive problem solving. So I'm going to throw out several pointers about this, just some common things that get in the way of problem solving so that you can get a sense of how to approach this. But obviously it's a very complex process, and it's a process you can keep practicing. And you can also set this as an expectation, right? So like when we have a problem come up, after everyone's calm and had a minute to settle down, we're going to address it in a specific way. And this is part of what Seth was talking about too, is having like a weekly check-in with the family and just listening to each other. People yell because they want to feel heard, right? I'm a big yeller in my past life. That's the only way I thought I could get my mom to pay attention to me, right? And by the way, I'm not a parent, so I'm here as the child perspective.
I was the quiet, I became the yeller, and I'm trying to get back to the quiet.
Got you. So the idea of proactive problem solving is this, is most of our problems are highly recurring and predictable, and there's kind of a hierarchy of problems. You can probably point to a couple of priority issues, right, that are the big ones. And so Dr. Ross Green talks about Plan B. And Plan B is the thing we do when Plan A doesn't work. When whatever Plan A is, that was the expectation we had, and that wasn't met. And Plan A, if we're kind of going with that model, it's about forcing the thing to happen that you need to happen, right? Forcing the kid to meet the expectation, forcing your partner to come, understand things the way you do. We have no control over that, and it causes a power struggle, and it causes problems to recur. So we just want to be mindful that usually we're Plan A-ing, and Plan B is the goal. But in the moment, we're actually using Plan C, which is right now, I know I can't fix or change what's happening, so I'm just going to drop the expectation. I'm Plan C'ing it right now, right? Focusing on your own calm. Plan B is, okay, I'm going to pick one priority problem to address. I'm going to get a little bit of buy-in from the person with whom I'm going to address it. And in this case, you're mentioning your partner and feeling like you're blamed for not caring enough of what's going on, right? Because you're allowing it to happen. So what we can do is, when everyone's calm, when we can set aside some time and agree to sit down and talk to each other, there's a 3-step process that we can practice to hear each other out and come to a mutually satisfying collaborative solution. And I'll just very quickly outline the 3 steps, and you can find it in the Lives in the Balance website. That's Dr. Ross Green's website. It's free. It's got all the resources. It's got a walking tour. It's brilliant. I highly recommend it. But this problem-solving process says that the person who's bringing up the concern with the other partner, right? You say to them in a non-judgmental way, hey, I'm noticing that when this is happening, right? I notice you have a difficulty of staying calm, or difficulty understanding why I'm not reacting in the way that you expect me to, or whatever it is. But you're noticing it, you're noticing a difficulty or a challenge, and you're bringing it up in a non-judgmental way. And then you're just asking that person to express to you what's up. And you're literally just saying, what's up? And the most important thing after that is to not say anything, not react, not have any expectations for what they should say, or feeling however you feel about what they're saying, but really just listening to understand what's the story, what's going on in their body, and how are they feeling, and how are they seeing you, how are they seeing the situation, getting really, really, really curious. And then whatever you hear, you just kind of say it back to them. And this is reflective listening. So saying it back to them, okay, I'm hearing you say that you think that me not reacting is ignoring the problem. You feel like I'm ignoring the problem. Okay, tell me more about that, right? So you're not being defensive. You're not trying to logically change their mind or whatever. You're just like, okay, tell me more, tell me more. Okay, you're really, really, really frustrated when you see me allowing our kids to behave this way. You believe that I'm being an irresponsible parent. Right. So whatever's coming at you, you just reflect it back, validate. And I can imagine that that's really, really frustrating for you. Sorry, I'm hearing some noises if everyone can.
I'm sorry. Yeah, it's my dog.
Oh, is that you?
The alarm went off, so she thinks it's dinner time, but it wasn't the dinner alarm.
Got it. That's a funny sound. I have ADD, so I'm very easily distracted, and then it'll take me a second. So when your partner has an opportunity to express themselves and to feel heard and to be validated, that's really disarming. And it's not a guarantee that they're going to listen to you, but it makes it more likely that they're going to give you the same respect and validation. So before your turn to talk, you could say, okay, this is what I'm understanding. You kind of summarize what you heard, you validate their emotions, and you're saying, thank you for being honest. Thank you for sharing this with me. It's really helpful for me to understand where you're coming from. And then you can express yourself, and you could even ask your partner, okay, I would like to share my beliefs, my experiences, and I want you to understand me. So if you can, whenever I'm done saying something, and you can go one at a time, you can ask them to reflectively listen back to you. So if you don't mind to repeat back what I'm saying, just to make sure we're on the same page.
Okay.
And once you get through that process, and I'm telling you, sometimes it takes, for me as a coach, an entire month or two just to get to the point where the kid I'm working with or the parent I'm working with is open to this process. They have buy-in, they feel like they could trust me, or like they could tell me the truth. So it's a whole process, and it's about doing it over and over and over again. But after that, there's a third step, which is the invitation step. And that is you're going to invite this person to come up with a reasonable, a realistic solution to the problem that addresses your concerns and their concerns. And you're going to get on the same parenting page, right? When X happens, then we will do this. It could be in the problem solving stage that both of you realize you don't really have a realistic solution to the problem that addresses your concerns. And you're at the stuck moment where you can then say, okay, we're hitting a wall. It looks like we need an outside person for some like neutral feedback, and get their buy-in on that, right? So kind of start wherever you can. But this 3-step process of first noticing one thing, right? You can't, there's this impulse to talk about everything and to bring up the thing they did 2 weeks ago and to say, well, you said, all that is that's there, but you just want to focus on one thing, and you want to model. One of my clients I'm working with right now, she's saying how this is a lot easier to do with her child, but when it comes to her husband, she's more easily triggered. And she is less accepting of where he is. So I would say to practice that with your parent partners, and to just accept exactly where they are, because you might be pursuing all this knowledge. You might be showing up to TEFOS and immersing yourself, and you're hearing a Q&A, and asking these questions, but they don't have that same perspective or framework. They might not have it. And no amount of convincing or lecturing them is going to help them meet you where you are. So
thank you so much.
So hopefully that was helpful. Cool. Welcome new people. Welcome, John. It's rare to see a male in the group, so it's always great. Hello. And a couple of other people. So we are just in the last final minutes of Q&A. I could take like 2 more questions or comments. I'd love to hear. You're immersing yourself in this conference. There's so much information coming at you. I'd love to hear from you. What are your biggest takeaways or aha moments, and what action are you going to take moving forward that's going to be just a little different than before? So that, or a question. I'm going to read.
So I'm going to be leaving the meeting, but mine is currently the highs and the lows. I want to just really try to start doing that. And then trying to make sure that my children and myself, we're journaling. That's going to be a hard one for us because, with my little ADHD brain and my children's, where we're at, writing is not our thing, but maybe if we just draw a picture or something of the day.
I was going to suggest that images carry so much data.
Yeah.
And drawing is so much more fun than writing.
Yeah. So we won't be writing, but we will be reflecting on our day. And then that's my biggest one.
Lovely.
And that I was able to even attend, because literally I completely forgot, and then it was there and I was like, I've got to get online. And so yay.
You made it from your car. I love it, Ramona. Thank you for sharing your takeaways.
I'm waiting for my friend. She's in the ER right now. So.
Oh, I hope she's okay.
Yeah, hopefully it's not COVID, but it is a world right now that we live in.
Yeah.
All right.
Thank
everyone.
You, Ramona.
Bye.
Okay, so reading the comments. So Ellen, you're saying leaning into the love message so your teenage son keeps hearing positive affirmation. Love that. Scott, I love that your label for your home is now Learning Lab. Love that. And you said you caught yourself saying so many times that if I talk to my parents the way you talk to me, and you said one of your action steps is going to be to strike that from your vocabulary. Love it. Emily shared, you really like when Houston talked about helping them understand kindness by asking your child to provide a specific example of how to show kindness. You've already been able to practice it today. Awesome. Having children tell you what they visualize. when they're supposed to do something. Yeah, because executive function is partly about being able to talk to yourself intentionally, not just those automatic thoughts that are floating by, but and also to visualize what it's going to look like to do the thing that you're doing. And we don't have that function really well developed in our brain. So talking it out loud is awesome. Anyone have any final comments or any last questions before we hop off here? Feel free to unmute yourself.
Hi.
Hi, Kimberly.
I just wanted to say I'm so grateful for the general awareness that something like this brings. I have 5 children, ages almost 22 down to 9.
Wow.
And, I actually just today received one of my son's evaluations, 37 pages full of data, you know, on my 2E kiddo. And it was the first one I've ever received over all the years that specifically had recommended executive function coaching. And I just think that over the past couple of years, you guys have really brought such an awareness of this out into the general public and to the schools. I mean, I'd kind of heard about it, but now it's like, it's exciting to me that I'm hearing teachers talk about it and stuff like that. So I just want to thank you guys for sharing so much information to teachers, counselors, parents. So I'm grateful for that. Thank you.
Thank you, Kimberly. And I'm always grateful for parents and teachers who show up and absorb all they can and they bring it out into the world. Like, we want you all to be ambassadors too. And we're so excited about this. Back when executive function, when I first heard about it, the definitions floating out there were like managing your calendar and, organizing. And it's like, it's so much more than that. It's so much more complex. And every year that there's this many speakers and so many other conferences too, it's like there's so much to talk about and there's so much to learn even after you've immersed yourself for years and years and years. So yeah, I appreciate you saying that.
So Yulia, with that being said, is there, so like one of the things that I'm struggling with is my son was being seen by the school psychologist to work on executive function, but all he ever talked about every week was his grades, which was obviously wasn't helpful. Can we go ahead and share our notes with, I mean, obviously we can't, I don't have any way to contact the teachers at this point. I've sent them invites to TEFOS and stuff before, but I know we have a new GT 2E coordinator. Take in and share our notes with them and give them resources. That's nothing proprietary that we're taking from you guys, is it?
No, I think we all want everyone to share.
Okay.
And we encourage it. And I'm a big fan. I see this question, El Witzel. Sorry, I don't know your first name. You can unmute yourself. But you're asking, how do you share with teachers to consider showing respect in the face? Oh, Lorraine. Hi, Lorraine. So your son has anxiety and his principal, your anxious daughter's principal now, used to take offense to his behavior and focus on him being disrespectful and rude. We're going to encounter people in the world because the way we're talking about this is countercultural, right? So the majority of the people in the systems we're going to encounter are not going to understand this, and they're going to have the old narrative. And obviously we can't just like expect to tell them, oh, by the way, you're wrong. And here's the right way to be, right? Because that doesn't work. What I have found helpful with schools, and again, some people just are really resistant, but what I have found helpful is to have a plan B conversation with like the kid and the teacher. With the kid and the principal, like have a plan B conversation and allow the child to be heard and really understood. And I have seen that have really wonderful results in terms of disruptive behaviors in class and things like that. But a lot of times parents will share resources with teachers, and they share like an overwhelming amount of things, or you'll write an email about your kid and it's like 5 pages long. And it's really hard to digest. So I know Seth's one of his biggest tips is just a quick bullet point list. And another big tip is, if you're giving information that's countercultural, to have I'm copying the kid's therapist, or I'm copying their coach, or have a team that's there to back you up, so that person who is going counter to that narrative that you're establishing, they're the odd one out. And it's not so easy for them to just discount or invalidate what you're saying, right? And also using the Plan B model, I just think it's so applicable that when people feel heard and understood, they're much more likely to hear you. So openly listening and validating, yes, I understand that that's distressing for you to experience. I understand that my child is being disrespectful, and that's not a behavior that we're okay with. And let's try to come up with a mutually satisfying way to support my child, because obviously punishing and shaming them is making it worse, right? So the safe relationships is the key to working together and collaborating in a positive way. So can this person have a safe relationship with their child, or is there someone else on campus that could be their advocate with their boss, their principal?
I just wanted to share that I actually had great success with my son's recent PPT meeting in the spring. It was over Zoom, and I put together a short PowerPoint presentation,
Awesome.
which I'd never done before. We're usually just talking, and that was very impactful. I did, just PowerPoints with just his diagnoses and various strengths and challenges. But I also linked Seth's video for What is 2E.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's like a 7-minute video or something. And just, they wrote me and like, wow, like now I see this, like the way he had put everything together, and it's an engaging video. Like I said, I've been through this for a long time, lots of kids, but that was super helpful, even just defining or having people be able to see what it could be. Because I don't think there's even a ton of clarification on that either. And that was a great starting point to get things moving forward. So
awesome. I'm gonna wrap this up with a final comment, and it's something that I've observed over years, and it's that I think the most powerful resource that we all have is each other. We don't have to learn everything from scratch and reinvent the wheel, right? And this community that TEFOS creates worldwide, it's different. The people keep coming back, right? And connecting and engaging. I think you all are each other's best resource. You have all the solutions. You've tried it and tested it, and you can be of great value to each other and a great support. And we all need each other to do this. We can't do this on our own. So I appreciate everyone being here. Yay, Ellen, I see your heart. Right back at you. Okay, everyone. This is recorded. I'm going to pop it into Facebook as soon as it's ready, and we'll share it. I'm getting lots of thank yous right back at you. And I hope you have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.